have questions?
What is slashing?
We have answers.
Slashing is, like that, you know?
Mm-hmm. And, there's a penalty for that?
Yeah. You do that, you go to the box, 2 minutes by yourself, and you feel shame, and then you get free.
This is CBJ in 30.
Anything you folks want to know about the fascinating world of pro hockey, here we go.
Tweet your questions by using the hashtag CBJIN30.
We'd like to remind you folks, keep your questions within the boundaries of good taste.
Here's your host, Bob McElligott.
And welcome once again to CBJ in 30 on this third day of June 2014, the day before the Stanley Cup Final gets underway between the New York Rangers and the Los Angeles Kings. Taking your questions, taking your comments. All you have to do is send them via Twitter today, and you can do that by using the hashtag CBJin30. That is CBJIN30. It's pretty simple to do. Heck, even I could do it if I weren't on this side. If I were on your side, I could even get it done. That's how easy it is to do. So, well, yesterday we talked a bit about what do you think about the matchup between the Rangers and the Los Angeles Kings and who's going to win the Stanley Cup and all of that stuff. And because the final hasn't begun yet, we can go through that again. If you didn't get a chance to chime in yesterday on that, you can chime in today. Let me know what your thoughts are on that and who you think is going to win. Obviously, two different schools of thought, people that think the Rangers are going to win and why, and where they have an advantage, and then people that think the Kings are going to win and why, and where they have an advantage. So that's going to be I think it's going to be a good series. I think a lot of it hinges on tomorrow night's game, because if the Rangers lose tomorrow night's game, and if they lose it in convincing fashion especially, well then maybe it won't be such a good series. Maybe it'll be over before you know it. But again, you have to wait and see, because that's the reason they play the game. I've done this before, and there are just some days you're just I just get in a mood. I get a song stuck in my head, and, the way that I'm able to power through that is I just kind of play it and get through it. But I think sometimes a song that gets stuck in your head tells you what kind of a mood you're in for that day, or what's going to be, just how you feel. And today I'm just kind of in a mellow mood, I guess. And this is the one that's stuck in my head today. So just bear with me. Let it play for a couple of seconds. Relax yourself before lunch. Get your question ready here on CBJ in 30.
I can see her lying back in her satin dress in a room where you do what you don't confess. Sundown, you better take care if I find you've been creeping round my back stairs. Sundown, you better take care if I find you've been creeping round my back stairs.
It's fitting that is Gordon Lightfoot, and he is proud Canadian. So it is a hockey show, so why not have a Canadian guy on?
Sometimes I think it's a shame when I get feeling better when I'm feeling no pain. Sometimes I think it's a shame when I get feeling better when I'm feeling no pain.
All right, that's enough. I just like that line. I don't know why. That feeling no pain line. That's the way my grandmother used to describe my grandfather a lot when I was a kid. Oh, he's feeling no pain. And that was a bad thing for him. He was in big trouble. Not that day necessarily, but the next day, big trouble. And he didn't want to hear it. I never understood any of that at the time. I have a better understanding of it now. It's funny how you get older and these things happen. So if you want to talk about the Stanley Cup Final today, we can do that. Here's another thing that I posed a little bit earlier, and I wanted your opinion on it, and I'm getting your opinions on it. A lot of talk about Pierre McGuire, and where is he going to end up? Will he still be a part of the NBC telecasts? Will he still be between the benches? Or what is the realistic shot of him becoming the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Because he's talking about it. He has confirmed, which, by the way, he is, when you want something confirmed about Pierre McGuire, just ask Pierre McGuire. He'll confirm it. It might take a little bit, but he'll confirm it. But he was on TSN Radio in Toronto confirming that he has spoken with the Penguins on more than one occasion about their opening for general manager. He is a guy that reportedly was in the mix for the Montreal Canadiens job a couple of years ago when it was open. And his name was bantered about with the Ottawa Senators a few years ago. Brian Murray still there. He never left, but the name was kind of bantered about. So is it realistic that Pierre McGuire could wind up being a general manager in the National Hockey League and being the general manager of a team that is in the same division as the Blue Jackets? And if so, how interesting would that be to you? And do you think that he would be a good fit, whether it's Pittsburgh or somewhere else? Do you see him as that kind of a guy? Now, remember, this is a guy that does have a good hockey background. And he was an assistant coach at St. Lawrence, and Scotty Bowman is the guy that found him and brought him to Pittsburgh initially because Scotty Bowman, if you recall, back in the early 90s, Scotty Bowman wasn't coaching. He was involved in scouting for the Penguins. And Bob Johnson was the head coach in Pittsburgh when they won their first cup in 1991. Scotty Bowman had already brought Pierre McGuire on, and then when Bob Johnson fell ill and unfortunately passed away after that first cup, Scotty Bowman took over on the bench, and Pierre McGuire was an assistant for that second cup run for the Penguins in 91-92. So he's done scouting. He's been an assistant coach. He was a head coach of the Hartford Whalers for 63 games or something like that. So he has that experience. Now, he hasn't been in any of those roles in some time. I understand that. But there are people that will make the argument that he knows more about most players than most guys do. I'm pretty sure if I were to call him right now, he could tell me what Boone Jenner had for breakfast back in 2010. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, on TV, he always knows. In fact, I listened to a radio interview with him today. I listened to him on TSN Radio. And there were two guys he was talking about, and I can't remember who they were, the Kings. I guess Toffoli and Pearson he was talking about. Right away, he mentioned the junior teams that they played for and what kind of players they were when they were there and what kind of players they're blossoming into now with the Los Angeles Kings. So he talks as though he knows a lot about these guys. And he does a lot of homework for the job that he has right now as an analyst, and especially being between the benches. And I would imagine, and I don't know because I've never been down there, I would have to ask Jody Shelley, but I can tell you this based on some of the conversations he and I had last year. Players can hear what you're saying down there. You're right there. Not that they're paying attention to you, not that they're eavesdropping every time you open your mouth because they've got their own stuff going on. But the fact of the matter is people can hear you down there and what you're saying. So you had better be right, because if you're wrong, they will take you to task about it. Maybe not right then and there, but at some point they'll say, hey, that's really not – my grandfather didn't have that job. He was actually this. So you've got to know what you're talking about down there when you're going to be in close proximity with the players while the game's going on. And you want to be right about their history. You have to be right about their history when you do this. And he is. So he's very knowledgeable. I just don't know if that is a good fit for Pittsburgh. I don't know if it's going to be a good fit for anybody in the NHL. But it's interesting to talk about because it's out there. Now, the Penguins, there was some rumors today, or I wanted to say media reports. That's really not it. But some of the media in Pittsburgh was saying that the Penguins could potentially hire a GM today before the Stanley Cup Final starts tomorrow. So there is a conference call with all of the NBC announcers today leading into tomorrow's Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. So early this morning, there was a lot of speculation whether or not Pierre McGuire would be on that call. He is going to be on the call. So even if he's getting that job, they're not hiring him now. But I don't necessarily think he's going to get that job. I'm sure Mario Lemieux talked to him. There is that history with the organization. There is the good hockey background there for him. But I'm just not sure. If I were to be asked my opinion right now, who do I think gets that job? I think it's down to one of two guys. And it's either going to be the guy holding the interim tag right now, Jason Botterill, or Julien Brisebois, who's the assistant general manager with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those seem to be the other two names. Now, that doesn't mean that a name doesn't come out of nowhere and somebody gets that job. But I haven't met Jason Botterill. I know there are people that speak very, very highly of him in this league. I saw him play in the American Hockey League when he was near the end of his career. He played for the Rochester Americans, so I automatically hated him, so therefore I never wanted to talk to him. That was the biggest rival when I was in Syracuse. But he's obviously, he brings a lot to the table, they feel, in Pittsburgh. And I would have to say this, how many weeks has it been? Almost 3 weeks since they fired Ray Shero, and they've let this guy go for 3 weeks? I mean, this time of the year, a lot of things need to get done, and he is overseeing those things. And again, not that they can't throw somebody else in there today or tomorrow to oversee the same things. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they've given him a lot of responsibility in the last 3 weeks. So he's there. He's got the job on an interim basis. And Julien Brisebois, I met last year during the Calder Cup final in Grant. Excuse me, that sounded really good, didn't it? It sounded like Peter Brady back in the day. By the way, Ann B. Davis died. She played Alice on the Brady Bunch, and I'm not just with that, but I finally realized that I'm of the age now where people like that, who I spent a lot of time in my childhood watching and were a big part of your life, right, through television. Now, you're of the age now, these people are going to start dying off. They're not being born now. You're going to lose more than you gain. That's just the way it goes. But anyway, that was the old Peter Brady, right? When it's time to change, got to rearrange. And don't forget, let your big lesson of this show be, Mom always said don't play ball in the house. Alice and Sam the Butcher, going bowling every week. Anyway, I'm way off track here. I had a chance to meet Julien Brisebois last year at the Calder Cup final in Grand Rapids when Syracuse was playing against the Grand Rapids Griffins. And I know that from talking to the people, because Syracuse is now affiliated with Tampa, and I talked to a lot of people that I know with the organization there, and they had raving reviews of him and the job that he does and how well he does it. And he works for Steve Yzerman. That's a pretty big plus right there, right? If you have Steve Yzerman pick up the phone and make a call for you, that would be a pretty heavy call right there. That carries a lot of weight. So if one of those two guys doesn't get the job, I would be surprised. I almost said shocked, but I guess not shocked. I'd be surprised. And if Pierre McGuire comes in and takes it, I don't know. I told you he's got the background and all of that stuff. I wonder how it would be perceived around the league if they hired him for that job. I'm just curious as to how it would be perceived. What do you think? That's the real question. Hashtag CBJin30, CBJIN30 on Twitter. CBJ Therapy checks in on this one and says, Pierre knows players worldwide. If anything, it may help in the drafts, which have been seriously lacking for the Penguins. It's a very good point. That's an extremely good point. That's really the reason they gave for Ray Shero being let go, because of the drafts and having too many defensemen and not having enough forward prospects in their system. So that's a good point. Again, he's got the background, he's got the knowledge, but I don't know if that's the direction they'll go. Brad Fox says, if Pierre gets the GM job in Pittsburgh, how long before Jody Shelley gets snapped up? I take it you mean by NBC, Brad. Probably a while. And I don't mean that as any disrespect to Jody. Number one, Jody would have to want to go that route to the national scene. And I just saw an interview he did with Aaron Portzline in the Columbus Dispatch the other day where he said he's very happy with what he had last year, what he has this year, and that's his focus, to be part of an organization. And I get that. It's funny because in this case, yeah, you would be out there on a big stage, but you're not part of what's going on. With Pierre McGuire, he's not part of a team right now. He's bouncing all over the place, and whoever's playing on that given night, people on both sides, and you don't really, Do you care who wins and loses if you're a network guy? Really? Do you care? You don't have the same stuff invested in it. Eddie Olczyk, different story, because Eddie's doing national games, but he also has a full-time gig with the Chicago Blackhawks. So he is working with the team. He's got the best of both worlds. He's going back and forth. He's doing some games that I'm sure he cares a lot about, and he's doing some other games that probably doesn't care who wins or loses, just wants to see a good game. So first of all, Jody would have to want to go into that realm. But if your question really is centering around would there be a possibility of him doing that, I would tell you 1,000,000% yes at some point. Now, he's probably going to want to get a little bit more seasoning. But I think, listen, the guy comes across so well, and he's so real. And if I were a network executive, I would look at him, and if I felt he was polished, and again, I'm not saying he's not polished, but he's on his way to being network polished. If I was a network executive and he was really impressing me, I'd hire him in a minute. I'd hire him in, less than a minute, in a second, because I think he'll connect with viewers. But I'm going to tell you something right now. There is a lot of work, a ton of work to do in that job. And that's what I was talking about with Pierre McGuire. I mean, you've got to know so many different things. And you have to be right, and you have different teams every day. That's another advantage of doing the job that we do here. One of the teams is always the same, and it's your team. And it's the guys that you should know best. And you do your work on gathering up information on the other team. Your team is your team. You're around them every day. You know them. You know what's going on. You know who they are. You know who their families are, all that kind of stuff. The other team you have to work on. You get into network TV, network radio, all of that. And you got to know it's work. It's a lot of work. A lot of work. Brad also wants to know if I've ever given any thought to an on-location CBJ in 30. I've given thought to it. In fact, it's been talked about. What we're missing right now is the technical aspect of it. Technically, how do we get it done? This is still something new. Brad, I don't know if you're getting spoiled and you think I've been doing this for 5 years, this show. It's only been about 5 weeks. I don't know. I don't even know how long it's been. But anyway, it's still relatively new. There's still some things that we would have to work out, and I'm sure at some point that's going to become a viable option for us to go somewhere and do this. I don't know. Maybe somewhere I could get free food and do it. You never know. Someplace like that. Maybe your kitchen, Brad. Maybe we'll just come over to your place and set it up. Do a barbecue and do the show. It's not a bad idea, actually. Jonathan says, are you excited for the All-Star game to be coming to Columbus this season? You know, Jonathan, I hadn't thought about it much lately, but something happened the other day, and this is how my mind works at this time of the year. I don't even remember what happened that made me think about, oh, yeah, the All-Star game is coming. I don't mean to downplay it. It just, it was a busy season, and then you get into the off season and you're focused on all the playoffs. And the other day I went, oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be great. I think it'll be great to have the biggest stars in the game here for a weekend. I think it'll be great to have the biggest names in the NHL on and off the ice here doing things. I think it'll be a great showcase for the city, again, just like the 2007 draft was. And I think it'll be a little bit more important, too, than that 07 draft, because if you go back to that, the Blue Jackets were still kind of a struggling along franchise, and this should be much different. And hopefully by the time you get to the All-Star break in January, your team's going to be playing really well. You're going to be sitting in a good spot in the division and in the playoff race. And you're going to have, I'm not going to say one, I say hopefully you're going to have a couple of guys in that game. Somehow, some way. Get a couple of guys in that game. That would be great. And, the way that they've restructured everything, I think is going to be a lot of fun. I think, the fantasy draft for the teams, I think it's going to be great. In the last couple of years, that's been one of the highlights of the All-Star weekend is the fantasy draft where the captains pick their own players. And That'll be a good time. The skills competition, you can still make the argument is the most fun event of the week because there's the head-to-head competition, but it's a lot of fun. There's team competition, head-to-head competition. It's very lighthearted. Guys don't have to wear helmets when they're doing stuff. That's a lot of fun. And then the game itself, usually it's a great game, and you'll see a lot of skill, and the final score is like 12-11, usually something like that. So that from that part, it's not. I could get in my whole spiel about professional all-star games and what's the best, and are they, do they even come close to the game that's played? And hockey and basketball really don't. And Pro Bowl is a throwaway to me. I think baseball is the only all-star game that's really similar to the game, the regular everyday game. But again, you're coming here to watch the best of the best, and you're not necessarily coming to watch a goaltender get a shutout. 12-11, you're happy. You see lots of goals. A lot of guys do a lot of things. And, yes, I'm looking forward to it, is the answer to the question. I'm looking forward to the All-Star weekend. Some more thoughts on Pierre McGuire. Atkinson's Army says, honestly, I'll be happy wherever Pierre lands as long as it's not on NBC Sports. There have been a lot of people saying that over the past couple of days with this story going, kind of picking up steam. So, and again, I don't know. Well, I'm different. For me to comment whether I like him or not, the job that he does, you're going to say, well, of course you like him. Well, you do that same kind of job. But, it's so objective what we do, and we're either liked or hated, and there's not much gray area in between. So he gets on people's nerves, and but to me, if you listen to him, you get something out of it. That's the thing for me. It doesn't matter. Is he going to say, look, I'm going to go on the air and do a game, and I'll probably tell you 10 goofy things, and I hope that I'm giving you 8 good things at least, right? I mean, that's nature of the beast, just the way it goes. Let's see. John Mark Tipping says, if the Penguins fans hate him or don't want him, I hope he gets the job. See? Now that's a rivalry. Told you we were starting a rivalry there with that playoff series. And instead of just talking about it, now we're starting to see a little bit of it. So there you go. Good tweet there, John Mark. John Mark Tipping. Interesting. I never thought about putting 3 names up there. Well, just thought about it. Not going to do it. Jody says, why do you love hockey? Why do you love hockey? Good question. Good question. I'll tell you what I love about it. I love the excitement. I love the speed. But why do I love hockey? Honestly, and I may have told this story before, and if I did, stop me. Oh, wait, you can't. I like the people. I like what it brings. I like the family atmosphere of hockey. I just like there are real people in this sport all around. Guys are out in the community doing things that you don't see players in other sports do all the time. Hockey players do more. I think they're more real people. I think that many of them have had a very honest upbringing, and their parents have sacrificed a lot just for them to play the sport, and they gain a sense of appreciation for that. They probably don't have that appreciation when they're 10 to 14 years old, but as they get older, they start to appreciate probably. God, I hope so, since mine's only 12. I hope he appreciates it someday. But, they get a sense of what their parents did for them to be able to play the sport and how hard you have to work and how important your teammates are, and they get all that. And that's what I love about it the most. When I used to do hockey and baseball at the same time, well, I was going to say not at the same time, 2 different seasons, but yeah, sometimes it was the same time. I've done a baseball game at 1 o'clock and a hockey game at 7:30. I've done that before in 2 different cities. But it's what I found was, for me, was the fact that as I went along, people would always say, well, what's your favorite sport? And I would say, well, whichever one gets me to the big leagues first. But as it went along, I started to realize that I liked baseball, and I liked being around the team and part of the team. That was fun. But there were only a couple of people involved in baseball that were like all of the people were in hockey. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying here, but in hockey, everybody, it's all for one, one for all. And baseball was very fragmented and kind of separate and more individualized than it was team-oriented. Just everything. Guys going to everybody being on the bus to go to the rink, or a handful of guys being on the bus and other guys going to the ballpark whenever they wanted to. There's a more of a sense of team, sense of family with hockey. So that's a very long way of telling you what I like about hockey. I like that sense of family. I like the sense of caring, and I like the people. And the game's great, but it's the people that really make it for me. David wants to know, if Pierre McGuire gets the general manager's job in Pittsburgh, will they move the GM's box to between the benches at the Consol Energy Center? Heck no, because if he's a GM, they won't want him anywhere near the bench to get him out of there. My goodness. Tyler Merritt says, Pierre knows the players and their bios, their parents' bios, what they ate for lunch that day. The guy's a book of random information. Book of random information. You know what? That would be, to me, that would be the biggest compliment for somebody to say, man, you are a book of random information. For the job that he has, because that's what he's supposed to be. Book of random information. I like that a lot. Well played, Tyler. Well played. Jim Dixon says, what's the holdup on the Derek McKenzie agreement? Well, I don't know that there's any kind of a holdup, Jim. Derek McKenzie's a pending free agent. Doesn't become a free agent until July the 1st. Today's June the 3rd. So that means there's a lot of time to try to get a deal done before July 1st comes. So I don't think there's any holdup whatsoever. I'm sure that, well, I know there will have been internal discussions about what to do with Derek and what kind of term and what kind of monetary offer the team would be comfortable with. I don't know if they've reached out to his agent on that or whatever. It's not really. That's, quite frankly, not my business. At least not now. But, I don't think there's a holdup at all. There's plenty of time. Plenty of time to get it done if they want to get it done. And you don't have to have it done by July the 1st. He can go free agent and he can re-sign on July 2nd or 3rd or whatever. So there's no holdup. Nothing like that. Nothing at all. Today's my kid's last day of school. Trying to figure out if this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's great for them, right? Great for them. My quiet time is going to disappear considerably. Unless I take him to the pool and drop him off and let him. Nah, I can't do that, right? Got to hang with him. This would be a great opportunity, and a great excuse is probably the better word, to get them really seriously into the sport of golf. Because that's the thing you can get away with that, right? Well, I know I spent the day on the golf course, but you know what? The kids are getting better. I'm trying to help them out. It's a life skill. It's not just a game. You can get a job someday just by playing golf. Maybe I'll try that one, see how it works. In the meantime, we'll be back here tomorrow, 11:30. First game of the Stanley Cup Final is coming up tomorrow night.